USA podcast where we put you on the map. This is Ron Costa broadcasting live in the Mappable USA studios here in Las Vegas. And today, folks, we're going to talk about a topic that is so important in crowdfunding. We started this podcast a while back talking about this very important and you just can't overlook this subject. So before we get into that, let's introduce our co-host, Vicky Hutchmala from the World Token Market. How you doing, Vicky?
Oh, I'm doing fabulous today, Ron. Perfect, beautiful day in Vegas. And today we have an exciting, different guest. We're going to learn all about marketing for crowdfunding, and I can't wait.
Yeah, I can't stress it enough. I mean, the marketing end of these crowdfunding deals are so important. So let's waste no more time. Let's bring on Manuj Grover. Manuj is the head of business development over at Plexus Media. Manuj, how are you doing today?
Ron, thank you for having me. I'm doing great. And Vicky, I'm just so jealous that it's a beautiful, perfect day where you are. I'm based out of Toronto, Canada, and we just hit 50, and people are partying on their porches.
Oh no,
man!
Well, the sun is shining, and I think it's going to get up to maybe 90 or something today. I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I've experienced Vegas in the summers and trade shows. So how about this? If you guys like we can't go through the border, but essential services, they're just export some of the heat up here. We'll take 10 degrees off you. I'll take that. Give me 10 Fahrenheit. I'll take it.
We'll do an export.
We might as well.
The exchange rate will be like 50% more. We'll be happy.
We'll have to negotiate the deal.
It doesn't even matter over here, Manuj. We can't play golf. The golf courses are closed, and we can't have trade shows because all the convention centers are closed. So we should all just go to Toronto.
Well, bring a jacket. Bundle up.
Yeah, exactly. So let's get into this a little bit as far as the marketing. But before we do that, Manuj, let's talk about you. Why don't you give us a little bit of background on yourself and what you've been doing and how you got to be over at Plexus and what you guys are doing there?
Well, like a typical immigrant North American story, my father came to Canada specifically about 50 years ago and settled here and basically had to fend for his family. So started being an entrepreneur. We had convenience stores, dollar stores, went into just working at flea markets. So my beginnings are humble, and at the end of the day, I had to learn how to work hard, and learn how to build relationships with people so we could sell our goods. From there, it evolved into working in our family business. We used to make imitation perfumes for a living, and so I used to come to Vegas twice a year at the Sands Convention Center in those days for trade shows. And after the 2000, realized that the market was dropping. We closed our business down and I entered into the financial services industry. So starting from the ground up, selling life insurance, mutual funds, mortgages, bank accounts, so working in the financial sector for banks and insurance companies. And eventually realized that this is not I don't fit in this box, and trying to find what my path was. So I quit my job, went back to school, started doing an MBA, and in my MBA learned something about crowdfunding. And I was like, what is crowdfunding? And I started reading up more on it and realized that I wanted to enter into the capital markets. That's where I thought I would really succeed and excel. But unfortunately, at the age I was and lack of experience, couldn't figure out how to enter in. And I thought crowdfunding and the technology aspect of it would be my entry into the sector. So from 2015 onwards, I've been working on the technology side creating white label platforms for crowdfunding portals here in Canada. I did that for about 2 years, after which started consulting with startups to help them provide them sales strategies, some governance, and helping them prepare for their fundraising. And for the last 2 years, got back into the technology side, where I was working with a firm, I think you're familiar with, Dealmaker, for a year. Mm-hmm. And just variously, from the last 6 months, I moved on to Plexus, which is a digital marketing firm focused on connecting issuers to retail investors.
Well, that's really interesting because I got to tell you, without question, I'm sure you can guess the number one question that I get from people, from issuers, generally regarding crowdfunding, and more specifically towards Reg A crowdfunding, is how do I get eyeballs onto my project? That's the biggest thing, because people can go through the whole rigmarole of creating the Reg A offering and the crowdfunding and get put on a platform, but it's not going to succeed unless people know it's there and are willing to begin the investment and get more information. So that is really the key, and it sounds like that's something that you guys are really focused on, laser focused on, actually.
The market has changed in the sense like, and COVID has basically sort of put a catalyst in revving and speeding forward. As we're not meeting people anymore, like for example, you're halfway across the continent and I'm on the East Coast, we aren't physically meeting with each other anymore. So how do we connect? The cell phone technology now makes the world a bigger place. So the key is, how do you effectively are able to communicate to this grand audience that's always connected, get your message out there, and more importantly, find the right person to communicate to, so that they actually believe in what you're doing and are willing to take that risk and go in with you. So that's, if you want to simplify it, that's the way I try to envision things. And I think those fundamentals are what build up a successful campaign or successful business at its own.
Yeah, so what are
nobody
marketers?
knows about you. Nobody can buy your product or engage your service if nobody knows you're there to offer it.
Well, Vicki, if you even take a step back, let's say, for example, you have your business. I make thingamabobs. So my thingamabob, I'm the best thingamabob maker in the world. But in reality, unless that thingamabob that I'm making actually provides value to somebody else, who really cares?
Exactly.
So regardless, even if I can communicate that I make the greatest thingamabob in the world, if you really don't need it, I'm not providing you value. So at the base of any organization out there, and just fundamental idea is that if I'm going to do something, first figure out what I want to do, what's the problem I'm solving, and who am I solving it for. So when those fundamental questions are answered, then a infrastructure like equity crowdfunding, Reg A, this great thing you have in the United States, can be leveraged to actually bring that solution to a mass amount of people and make people the opportunity to participate and everybody money. So at the core is, sorry. No, I interrupted.
Well, you're absolutely right, Manuj, because that's the second most important part of your business or your thingamabob. That it's one thing to create it, it's one thing to go through the process of producing it or creating the very best there is, but you have to pay attention and spend time and focus on who is your end user, and then go to that end user and convince them that this is the best, and not only that, but they can't live without it.
Exactly. And your show right here is a phenomenal example. Jobs Act was passed in 2012. Oh, my pleasure. And because I want to use it as an example in our conversation, was when the Job Act was passed. You had this new playing field that nobody really know what was going on, and still now it's been 8 years. There are not as many transactions as one would think, because they're still trying to feel out what are the rules, what you can do, what you cannot do, and individuals like yourself are now creating a product that will be consumed by individuals who need that information. You're actually servicing a need, and you're providing them information so that they can make the right business decision and either say, is this right for me or not? And if it is, yes, I'll move forward. But if it's not, at least now I know what I can do. I will not waste my time doing this. I'll do something else. So
exactly.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I always use the example of that whole, if you build a palace out in the Sahara Desert, who do you even know about it? And then, the response is typically, okay, Ron, well then explain Las Vegas, right? Because that actually kind of happened. But yeah, I think one of the problems with the crowdfunding in terms of the the popularity of deals and successful deals is a lot of these guys, these issuers, they don't understand the value of marketing. They don't understand that they have to put aside a certain amount of money in a budget to make this project, get out there so people can see it and people can say, yeah, you know what, this is something I want to look into and invest more. So that's really the art of the whole matter, the ability to create a campaign and a whole, all these marketing items that will entice these investors, and that's really hard to do.
So once somebody has created their perfect thingamabob, Manuj, what do you do to help them to get people to understand that they can't live without it?
So where we get involved is, and thank you, that's a great question, Vicki. We would, let's say, for example, we get introduced to a thingamabob maker, and actually it's, how would I say this? We try to become a partner for them. So we sit down with them saying, okay, what is your vision? What is your messaging? Like, you're creating this product here for somebody to consume. What are you trying to solve as a problem? Okay, then whose problem are you trying to solve? So we do these brainstorming sessions and trying to create all these questions, because marketing is basically the art of communication. And what you have to know is, what are you communicating and who are you communicating to? And by doing these brainstorming sessions, we basically I try to identify something called an ideal investor profile. And our company's value proposition is that an investor is also a client. And so, for example, let's say if you opened a phenomenal restaurant, and I invested in the restaurant so to get up and running, I'd want to eat there. So by eating there, not only have I become an investor, but I'm the consumer at the same time, and I want to share that news to everyone. So by actually properly understanding who your investor/client is, creating these personas, we then work with the messaging, the story, the real emotion behind it. Because as much as people like to tout deals and numbers and return on investment, we're all human beings. We all are passionate, and we all have fundamental beliefs and values. So no matter what I do, if we're able to connect one entity that has certain values to another entity that shares the same values, you're likely to have a success. So we try to be first the originator and then the bridge to get it towards that investor who actually fits your investor profile and shares those values. Because in crowdfunding, you can get a massive audience, but like they say in traditional retail, location, exactly the same thing online. You need to be at the right place at the right time with the right audience.
Right, and relationships and partnerships are vital aspects to any business, regardless of what their service or product is. And I've also discovered that every industry, whatever thingamabob or whatever service it is that you're doing, every industry has its own language. And you have to learn the language and know how to teach the end users of your products or services that language so that they can create an emotional connection to it. And that's what marketing, I think that's what marketing does at its core, is teach the language and create an emotional connection to it.
Yeah. And transfer trust.
Exactly correct. Transfer trust. And the more, not only relationships and partnerships with like-minded businesses and individuals, but I think it's also important to listen to and understand your competitors' emotional connection as well, because you can learn a lot by studying your competitors and building on what they're doing to make what you're doing better.
Agreed. There's one book I read during my MBA in my marketing class, actually. In fact, it was called A Strategy from the Outside In. And one thing it stated, as I mentioned before, about understanding what the other person's needs are, and that it doesn't matter how well I do something. It depends on what the need of the other party is, and that if you're giving that value. It also interrelates to actually knowing around you what's going on, keeping your eyes peeled open and learning all the time.
Exactly.
Because if you're doing one thing now, a year from now, that may be archaic. So therefore, by seeing and reading and listening, mostly listening of what's going around you, you'll learn, you'll get better, and basically you'll be a step ahead.
Absolutely, because successful businesses are adaptable, and you have to, no matter how much you strategize, no matter how much you plan, you've always got to have a plan B and a plan C and know how to transition into that if something should happen and your plan should fall apart for whatever reason. You need to right away be able to have your plan B and know what's going to happen and know what the result is going to be when you go into plan B.
Agreed, and we're living through that example live right now.
Absolutely.
with this whole COVID situation.
No
Now,
question,
there's constant talk about how are we going to reopen? How do we get any type of normalcy in our life? How am I going to feed my family? And if you use a barbershop as an example, and where you have an intimate interaction with somebody touching you with a pair of scissors in their hands, now, in order for me as a consumer to have that normalcy and say, okay, just to have some sanity in my life, I need to go back to the previous habits I had, but I have this inherent risk. So now the other business has to communicate to me somehow, like, hey, come back. We have taken the step. We care about you. We care about your well-being and health. So here's what we have done to ensure that, so that your experience and we are is good, safe, and that we have that transfer of trust on both ways.
Exactly, because normal is going to be recreated, and we're never going to go back to that normal that we knew 3-4 months ago, but we will adapt to a new normal that has been recreated due to the circumstances and our adaptability.
100%.
Yep, that's what companies do for sure. A couple of questions, Manuj. If we go back to an issuer perspective on what you guys are doing, an issuer comes to you you sit down at a table with them and they do that brainstorming thing you mentioned, and you come up with some kind of a plan. Do you guys implement the plan as well for them, like create videos or doing things like that? Are you a one-stop shop in terms of marketing?
We are. We do offer all the services in creating the content and creating the consumable. However, we have a core strength in syndication distribution, meaning, let's say, for example, yourselves, you have a product here, your podcast, and it is a content. It is a creatable, a consumable by individual. So if we were working for yourselves and we came up with the brainstorming, you identified the ideal investor persona, our strength is taking what you have, formatting it into the distribution network we have with all our partners that present it to the investors, and then pushing it through. Then basically creating an re-engagement and retargeting and optimizing tactics, which are mostly the digital tactics that any digital entity would use, to actually continuously remind all the investor about your opportunity, about your offering, to the point where they say they've opted in. And once they've opted in, then we basically provide the investor's information to the issuer, and then it's the issuer's responsibility to do whatever means they have, either be it their crowdfunding platform through a broker-dealer or an IR firm they have in-house to engage in that investor and convert them to a shareholder.
Do you have tracking capability, too, to determine whether a campaign is working or not?
The amazing thing about technology and doing things online is everything is measurable. Have you actually, if I may give an example, have you been on a website and you see this little banner ad and you just click on it or go over and read it, and then you go onto another site and that same ad pops up again?
Yes, yeah. It happens all the time, in fact.
Yeah, that's called tracking. It's really creepy, but it's very effective, where we actually track you online. So we can actually have data of what type of sites you go into, and this is all public domain. If none of this is actually infringing on the privacy information of the individual, like we do not know what decisions you've made or what the product may be, other than the one that the banner ad we've provided, or in the site that you've gone on, but we know how many times you saw it and clicked on it. So by seeing impressions, view time, how many, and then basically tracking different areas, and from Facebook to Instagram to any other site, we get measurements, and those metrics is what we use to say, okay, what is the conversion success of that individual? From there, actually, if I even take it back and make it more like a anecdotal experience, I grew up in a time where we didn't, before computers even were there, or even cell phones were there, when I was much younger. So when I'd be driving in my dad's car, you'd see a huge billboard for a car dealership. My dad would turn on the radio, hear the radio of that car dealership. Drive by a bus stand, there'd be a sign in the bus stand on the bench, and then you're watching the ball game, and the car dealership has an advertisement. So right then there, you have between 5 to 7 touch points. And that's how long it takes for a person to make a decision about a particular product or service. So when they are ready to buy the car, that dealership's what's going to stick in their head. But however, I cannot measure how many times a person saw that billboard, right? You just hope that you get the ideal location where you have the most traffic coming in, and hopefully there's enough numbers or concentration that they'll see it, and once they're ready to buy a car, they'll buy it from that dealership. Whereas online, we can mimic those touch points from being either Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or any other site you're on, or any other forum you're participating in, but measure how many times you actually viewed it, how many times you interacted with it, and based on those touch points and the analytics we use, we know that this individual is interested in this offering, and then we have a call to action. So if they say yes, then we just follow up with emails to create that relationship with the issuer and push them out to their website, landing page, or a representative from the issuer coming in and calling the investor to close the deal.
Yeah, technology is amazing that way. Just the other day, something really kind of scary happened to me. I just thought, how did this happen? I was talking to a friend of mine, and I'm from New York. I'm a big Mets fan, and my friend lives in Los Angeles, and we were talking about when baseball starts again. I said, you know what? It'd be nice to go out to Los Angeles and catch a Mets game, Mets Dodgers. That would be a lot of fun. And we finished our conversation, and I don't know, about an hour later, I get on my computer, I get on Facebook, and all of a sudden the first ad is flights to Los Angeles. And I said, wait a minute, how did they know that? Is that just that's ridiculous. I hate to sound conspiratorial, but who's listening to me?
But I think that was just coincidental.
Yeah, I think so too.
No, nobody was tracking you. No.
No, but tracking works. It's part of technology, and as you mentioned, you got to take advantage of all that tech offers and do it in a way that's effective and works and closes deals.
And specific for Regulation A, because one can go from can raise within 12 months up to $50 million on a tier 2 and $20 million on a tier 1. Those are big dollars. And for an average small medium business, thinking about how to raise that capital to bring their business to the next level, you need to have a proper plan in place. And the only way you can effectively execute is having a digital online marketing strategy that gets your product or service in front of as many eyeballs as possible. And the analogy I use is having a big block of ice that you keep on chipping down into making that ice sculpture swan that you see at parties. Yeah.
You need reggae issuers have to understand that there's so many of them, and so few of them do it well, and there's a lot of projects that just don't get the momentum, and they always wonder why. It's like, why is I'm a smart CEO, I've got a great product, how come everybody isn't biting at the bit on this? And it's because of basically bad marketing, or just like marketing that doesn't take advantage of all the things that you're talking about right now. And it's sad to see, but I think that's one of the biggest things that's wrong with reggae right now, where people can't point to a ton of success stories. It all comes down to marketing.
Absolutely. Manuj, you kind of have a dual. You have to create a dual marketing plan, because you have the end user who's going to buy your absolutely fabulous thingamabob, but then you also have to market to an investor who's going to invest in you to be able to create that fabulous thingamabob. How do those two marketing strategies, do they overlap or are they completely separate, or how do you address that?
Well, I think the entity that sort of refined this concept is like Kickstarter. I know it's a different sector of crowdfunding, but in their business model, they're engaging individuals to pre-invest in a potential product and see if there's a value in there, and if they do, they'll be the early adopters. So when I think about that and perceiving an investor like a client, in the last 2 transactions that we're working on, we had a session with the issuers, and what we said to them is that you have a consumable product. One's a technology company with an app, and the other one is actually a motor vehicle accessory. And we were identifying the actual type of investor profile, and also saying, okay, who's your clients? Who uses these products? And when we realized that they're very similar. So how we were brainstorming is that, well, if you make an offer to an individual to invest in your business, shouldn't they know what the experience of that product is? So for the car accessory company, we said at a particular threshold, let's say it's $5,000 investment, you get this product mailed to you as a thank you token. What that does is you have the product, and it requires servicing, potentially a warranty, and this business already has infrastructures with retailers selling this product and service. So now he has the name of a client. He has sent them the product. They're using it. They might, if they love it, they might want more. You can direct them to a retailer who will buy from him the product. So now you just created demand downstream for your own client from your tactics of
Interesting.
Right. So it's about having that big picture of the analogy I could use is, for example, when you go to a bank and you open your first bank account, for that bank, for you to be a profitable client, you need to have 5 products. So you start with your bank account, then they give you a discount and say, okay, we put money in, hey, get a GIC, opening GIC will give you a promotional rate. So now you have 2 products and your money's there. Over time, you built a relationship, they'll give you your first credit card. Then you get your job, you get a 401k plan or a IRA plan, and then you basically IRA, then you transfer to the bank and they manage it there. That's 4. You have your mortgage, 5 lenders. So basically, all of a sudden, organically, you're already there. We don't have to search for you. Just keep on upselling. And if you apply that to any business, you can even do that when you're raising capital. They're already there. If they use the product, they like it, they will generate more sales for you.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. Is there some kind of a magical formula in terms of what a issuer would expect to spend on their marketing budget based on how much money they're looking to raise?
So we've done some research with a lot of dope broker dealers who play in the Reg A space, and it's a hit and miss depending. It's the product is important, the audience is important to assess, and also market. For example, if you're doing something in biotechnology and it's COVID related, you're likely going to have much more traction, much more bang for your buck right now. So those are some variables that you take into consideration. But if I say that if you wanted to raise $10 million and you kept a 2% budget, so let's say $200,000, that's a good start. But it doesn't mean you need the $200,000 up front.
Right.
One thing phenomenal about the way the Reg A legislation is started, you can take the proceeds of the money you make from this fundraising and reinvest it. So there's a starting point you start from, but what the common logic is that, let's say if you raise $1 million, take 20% of that, put it aside for marketing. You may not use all the dollars, but at least there you have 80%, $800,000 for your working capital operations and logistics to get that transaction done. And then you have $200,000 for marketing that for every dollar you want to get 4, 5, 6, 7x, so that you create that momentum to raise more money.
And that applies for whether it's a tier 1 or a tier 2 offering, right? That pretty much goes the same, right?
Okay. The fundamentals are the same.
Yeah, exactly. But I would imagine like a Reg D deal probably a little bit different because you have to basically appeal to accredited investors only then, right? So it's got to be a little bit different.
It is a bit trickier, and the reason why is everybody wants a Reg D investor, which is an accredited investor. Why? Because there's almost no you could write your business plan on a tissue paper, give it to them. They say yes, it's legal. So, and it's in North America, Canada, U.S., Australia, UK, same logic. The tax definition of a accredited investor may slightly change, but the fundamentals are the same, and so they're highly valued targets. So if you if you want to attract highly valued targets, you have to be more refined and create a much better profile of that user, and then track them more. It does cost more, but
they're the most sought after investor, obviously, and they're the most difficult to find because they don't want to be found, basically. So that's the challenge.
Well, it comes back to the language of what you're doing, too. With certain investors, you have to have a lot more finesse than you do with other investors because everybody wants them and they know it. So they go with the one that most appeals to them emotionally.
For me, I love the Reg A offering side because it expands to everyone. And then you truly have to do with the art form of, okay, how do I, like you said earlier, how do you communicate to that client/investor? And it gives you much more like a bigger canvas to play with, more colors to play with, and you can basically do A/B testing and see, okay, if this doesn't work, no problem, we'll try this B.
Exactly.
Plan B doesn't work, plan C. So I love the Reg A concept, and it allows for more creativity for sure.
Yeah, a lot of Reg A guys right now are probably listening to this podcast and thinking to themselves, okay, well, I have a project that I'm thinking about going Reg A. I'm not sure, or some of them may have projects that are already in place that they're waiting for their approval, SEC approval, or maybe they've even got the approval and they started doing their own little thing. What's the best time for these companies to contact you guys and start talking about their marketing? Is it before they even consider a Reg A, or before they get the paperwork going, or what's the ideal situation?
Well, if we meet them before they've submitted to the SEC for their qualification review, that would be ideal, because at that point we can see if they've been approved for testing the waters, as well as because you have different tactics for a pre-qualified and a qualified transaction by the SEC, so there are different rules. So if we get there early enough, we can actually work with them to build out a plan, and basically I do all that grunt work of ramping up, working with them on their branding, communication strategy of what messaging we're going to send, so it's consistent within the product and the entire organization. Because if different sites are saying different things, if the company is saying something to the clients and saying something different to the investor, you need that congruency. If there's no, or it has to be synchronized. If it's not, it basically negatively affects each other. So we do work all that planning in upfront. That's ideal. However, I've had the privilege of getting a client who was already 50% into his raise, but saw value and was not doing what we were doing all manually, and it took much longer. So we're coming in, we made a proposal, and they liked what we're offering, and now our objective is to make sure that their balance of their raise gets closed in a much faster rate. Even if we generate a lot of investor leads and not all of them buy, you now have a database of people you can go back to, and you're allowed to, because they've engaged with you, so it's legally allowed to communicate with them. So
that's right,
So when they launch the next raise, they already have a database they can work with and go back to the original investors and then some. So they're already a step ahead.
Yeah, you mentioned
it's kind of like I like to think of it as the do-it-yourself syndrome, where a lot of people think that, oh, well, I've created this fabulous thing and I have this fabulous information to share, and so I'm going to do everything. But just because you can create something doesn't mean you know how to run a business or market what it is that you're trying to sell. And the sooner you, like you say, Manuj, the sooner you get to somebody and delegate that and not feel the arrogance of, oh, I can do everything, the easier it's going to be, and also the cheaper, because when you finally do go to that person or that company like Plexus, you don't have to redo it. You don't have to fix the mess that you made, because there is no mess.
Which is true, and at the same time, as you stated, people like to do things or think they should do things themselves, because nobody wants to make a mistake, right?
Everybody wants control
as well, and we always think perfection is the best thing. In reality, it's best effort is important as well. You'll never be perfect.
No.
So as long as you can identify what your strengths are and have a team around you that can do their job properly and deliver, and that's the whole aspect of trusting the people around you, you succeed together.
Absolutely.
Yes. And Manuj, before we close this out, I have one more question. I'm just curious. You mentioned the testing the waters before. Are companies doing that? What percentage of the Reg A people are using testing the waters? Do you know?
Well, I don't know about the Reg A overall, but of our clients, so basically just in the last let's use COVID, like March to now as an example, we right now have 5 clients we're working with, and 3 of them are doing testing the water. So for us, it's about 60% in the last 2 months.
Yeah, when I first found out about the testing the waters a while back, obviously, I thought it was a greatest thing. I'm like, what a great thing! And I've been reading some articles about why companies shouldn't do it, and I've also read articles of why companies should do it. So it's like they both make great points.
Vicky, as you stated earlier about keeping your eyes open, seeing what other people are doing, it's always a case-by-case basis, because I think the biggest risk is you do the test of waters, you put all this money into this program, you've invested capital into the infrastructure of the business, and you're really excited about it, and it fails. It hurts.
Yeah.
But failure does not define you. Failure means that it's a learning opportunity. You learn from it and you move on. Maybe this business doesn't make sense at all. You leave it there, or just the tactic we applied does not work. So go back to the drawing board and come back with a new plan.
Well, let's not have these issues fail. We can't have them fail, because we have to get these people who are listening on the podcast right now, these issuers, to contact you, Manuj. There's no question about it. You guys have a great service for these. You don't want to avoid the success that they can get from getting in touch with you guys. How do they do that? What's the best way to contact you?
Well, right now, if you allow me to, can I give you my phone number, email, and website information?
Sure.
And
Absolutely.
So my name is Manuj Grover. That's Manuj, last name Grover, like the guy in Sesame Street, Grover. No relation, just to let you know. So I can't get you autographs. Email is Manuj, my first name, at Plexus, Plexus .media. And my direct cell, I'll give you my cell phone number, is area code 647-938-9676. And I believe if they have a question, don't hesitate to call me, because worst case is we just become friends.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Vicky, what do you think?
I think that Manuj offers an excellent service to everybody out there listening to understand the fine points of marketing your product and marketing your business to your end user and to your investor. And if that's what you're about, Manuj is the person you need to talk to right now.
There you go. So Manuj, to close this out, I just want to thank you for taking the time out to speak to our audience over here, because I know you're swamped and busy in what you're doing. So thank you very much for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure and honor. Thank you once again. And please remember to send some of the heat over here. We need it.
There you go. We'll do that. We will do it, especially in August. We'll do it in August for sure. So, all right, folks. Thank you, Vicky, for co-hosting. Again, thanks, Manuj, for being a guest. And folks, you're listening to the Mappable USA podcast at mappableusa.com. You go to that website, scroll down, you'll see all our syndication sources. Pick the one you like best, subscribe so you'll never miss another Mappable USA episode. And if you like what you heard today, send us an email, info@mappableusa.com. Let us know, or make a comment on the page that you're probably listening to this right now. And lastly, there's a guest tab on that website. Click on that guest if you want to be a guest on the show like Manuj was today, and we'll see what we can do about getting you on the show. So once again, everyone, thanks for all your support. Thanks for listening, and we'll be at you next week with another Mappable USA podcast. Have a great week, everyone.